Today, we're diving into a really influential book, one that has sparked a ton of theories about who's really running the show. Fritz Springmeier's Bloodlines of the Illuminati. Now, our job isn't to prove it's right or wrong, but to simply understand what it claims. So, let's pull back the curtain and see what's actually inside.
Right off the bat, the book hits you with this huge, kind of unsettling question. Are all the major events you read about in history books just random, the result of politics and chance? Or is there a hidden script? This one question really is the key to the entire book.
And boom, this quote gives you the book's answer right away. It argues that yes, there is a hidden hand, a small group of incredibly powerful families who are, according to this text, the world's unseen puppet masters.
So, to really get our heads around this, here's our game plan. First, what is this idea of an unseen ruling class? Then, who exactly are they? How do they supposedly keep control? What big historical events does the book claim they engineered? And finally, what's the supposed end game to all of this?
All right, let's start with the core concept. The book's main argument is that the real power in the world isn't held by presidents or prime ministers, but by a secret, hereditary group that's been calling the shots for centuries.
You know, the word Illuminati gets thrown around a lot, but in this book, it means something very specific. A council of 13 families where power is passed down from one generation to the next. And here's the kicker. The book claims they operate completely above the laws that you and I have to follow.
Okay, so if this group exists, who are they? The book doesn't just talk in vague terms. It actually names names.
And here they are, the 13 names the source identifies as the absolute core of this global power structure. According to the book, these aren't just rich families. These are the families whose bloodlines are supposedly woven into the very fabric of global events.
And this is where the theory gets super specific. It's not just a list of names. The book assigns each family their own turf. For example, it connects the Astors to the opium trade, the DuPonts to weapons and banking, the Rockefellers, well, you probably guessed, oil, but also, according to the book, the creation of the FBI. It ties Onassis to cashing in on World War II, and even claims the Lee family was connected to the invention of paper money.
Now, this is a really critical point the book makes. The argument isn't that these families just bend the rules or have good lawyers. The claim is way more extreme. For them, the law as we know it simply does not apply. They are the law.
Okay, but how? I mean, how could just a handful of families control the entire planet? Well, this next section gets into the alleged mechanics of it all. This massive, sprawling network they supposedly use to pull the strings.
The source lays it all out like a pyramid. Right at the very top, the inner circle, you've got the 13 families. Just below them are secret societies like the Freemasons or Skull and Bones, which the book says are like recruiting grounds. Then you've got these front groups, like the Council on Foreign Relations, and holding it all up at the bottom, the big institutions that shape our world, the banks, the media, the intelligence agencies, all allegedly under their control. So let's take a group like the Freemasons. The book describes their role not as the masterminds, but more like an Intro 101 class. It's a place to get new members familiar with the symbols, the rituals, and the whole culture of secrecy before they move up the ladder.
This slide really captures the shocking contrasts at the heart of this book. So, we all think of the FBI as the country's top law enforcement agency, right? But the book presents a totally different picture. It claims the FBI was created by the Rockefellers to be their own private enforcement arm. And the allegations get incredibly dark, even claiming the agency was involved in kidnapping kids for satanic rituals.
And this quote pretty much sums up the book's deep, deep skepticism of any kind of official oversight. The logic here is simple. How can you possibly have a real investigation when the person in charge is allegedly part of the very power structure being investigated? It's the classic fox guarding the henhouse argument.
Okay, so we've talked about the who and the how. Now we get to the what. What has this group supposedly done? This part of the book takes a look at major historical events and reframes them as deliberately planned operations.
The text lays out a timeline of what it calls manufactured events. It says the 1928 oil cartel wasn't just a business deal, it was a plan to divide up the world's resources. That the '29 stock market crash wasn't an accident, it was a deliberate show of force. That Pearl Harbor wasn't a surprise but was allowed to happen. And that during World War II, these families were making a fortune trading with both sides of the war.
One of the most specific claims the book makes is about a supposed deal between Rockefeller Standard Oil and the German chemical giant IG Farben. The allegation is that this partnership was essential for developing the synthetic fuel that powered the Nazi war machine.
And according to the book, this isn't just about wars and finance. The alleged influence seeps into every corner of our culture. It makes claims about everyone from Walt Disney to the people who wrote the 14th Amendment. It even reframes the O.J. Simpson trial as a manufactured event to stir up racial tension, and accuses powerful foundations of pushing specific political ideologies in schools.
So, all of this leads to the biggest question of all: why? What is the ultimate point of all this supposed control and manipulation? Well, this final section covers what the source calls the end game, the New World Order.
So, the New World Order is presented as the final goal. The idea is to get rid of all individual countries and create one single, all-powerful world government. And the book argues that this plan is sold to the public as a path to a beautiful utopia, world peace, no more war, but that its real purpose is total top-down control.
The book even points to famous thinkers like the author H.G. Wells, arguing that they were used to sell the idea of a world government, to make it sound appealing and logical. But the source is adamant that's just the public relations campaign for something much, much darker.
And in the end, according to this book, it all boils down to this one number: one. One world government, one world army, one world financial system. This is presented as the finish line, the culmination of centuries of secret planning.
So, if you were to boil down the entire message of Bloodlines of the Illuminati into just one sentence, this would be it. The book asks you to stop seeing history as a series of chaotic, random events and start seeing it as a carefully written script with a hidden director behind the scenes.
And that leaves us with one last, much broader question to think about. Whether you believe the claims in this book or not, it forces you to ask, what is the real connection between enormous wealth, deep secrecy, and the kind of power that can shape the world? And that's a question worth thinking about long after we're done here.